Why are you not a Christian?
Because I see no evidence whatever for any of the Christian dogmas. I've examined all the stock arguments in favor of the existence of God, and none of them seem to me to be logically valid.
Do you think there's a practical reason for having a religious belief for many people?
Well, there can't be a practical reason for believing what isn't true. That's quite, at least I rule it out as impossible. Either the thing is true or it isn't. If it is true, you should believe it, and if it isn't, you shouldn't. If you can't find out whether it's true or whether it isn't, you should suspend judgment. But you can't, it seems to me, a fundamental dishonesty and a fundamental treachery to intellectual integrity to hold a belief because you think it's useful and not because you think it's true.
Well, I was thinking of those people who find that some kind of religious code helps them to live their lives. It gives them a very strict set of rules, the rights and the wrongs.
Yes, but those rules are generally quite mistaken. A great many of them do more harm than good. And they would probably be able to find a rational morality that they could live by if they dropped this irrational, traditional, taboo morality that comes down from savage ages.
Be advised that this show is not for children, the faint of heart, or the easily offended. The explicit tag is there for a reason. This is Cognitive Dissonance. Every episode, we blast anyone who gets in our way. We bring critical thinking, skepticism, and irreverence to any topic that makes the news, makes it big, or makes us mad. It's skeptical, it's political, and there is no welcome mat. Here for our 7th episode, Cecil. It's I think we're really moving along with some momentum here. That's evident because we actually have stories to talk about that were recommended to us, rather than dredged up.
We also have people on our page saying, could you fucking get off your ass and post another episode, please?
Here's the thing. I appreciate that very much, but none of those people will work for me. I've responded to, yes, I promise you, I will do this much more frequently. What I need you to do is be a short, fat guy and come to work and pretend to be me. So if you can do that, then I can definitely... No, we're actually very, very pleased that people like the show enough to clamber and harass and harangue us for more of them. We will try to get these shows out with increasing regularity.
I think it'll be difficult, Tom, to find a short, fat man on the internet. I think that it would be a difficult
task. Just look
task.
for hot single women. That's what you do.
Yeah.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
In a news story, this is actually an awesome little news story that was recommended to us by a couple of our listeners. Austrian man wins right to wear pasta strainer in license photo.
He looks so awesome.
He does look awesome. So there's a gentleman, Nico Alm, a self-described pastafarian. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with Pastafarianism, it is based on the Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which is an awesome fake or real religion.
It's a real religion. It's the same thing.
That was basically dreamt up in response to the sort of dubious claims of, there is a God that that people have been yammering about for some time. So this gentleman was evidently touched by his noodly appendage, and he fought to have, I guess you can only wear headgear in your photos for official photos if it's religious, which is ridiculous. Because why can't I wear a baseball hat? It'd be like, fucking, I love baseball.
No,
like,
you
I know
don't.
you like God. But I fucking love baseball. I love it so fucking much. Like, whatever. Like I wear a fishing hat or something, like I like fish.
I want to wear a ski mask so they don't recognize me. Like, that's what I want to wear.
I'm going to wear just a full burqa and get my picture taken.
Are you sure this isn't your sister's ID?
No. So he's wearing, in his photo, a pasta strainer. He's wearing a fucking colander on his head.
Oh, it's fucking super duper awesome, too. They have a picture, a little better picture. We're going to post the link on our site. There's a little better picture below where you could actually see the handle of the fucking strainer sticking out to the right side of the photo. It's really very funny. I think this is exactly what you need to do, right? We talk about, Tom, you and I talk about this all the time, that there's lots of ways to be angry and feel like you're slighted by religion and like, how dare they, present themselves as the people who are sort of the chosen people, the people like, specifically not just the chosen people by like God, but the chosen people by the governments that they're in. They're like first-class citizens because they get kind of what they want because they're the squeakiest wheels that you can find. So they bitch and bitch and bitch and they get 10 commandments put up in a courthouse somewhere. We have religious iconography in all kinds of state areas and in the Supreme Court even. And, here's an opportunity to say, hey, dude, here's my flying spaghetti monster. I'm going to wear, I believe in the flying spaghetti monster. I love that when they're finished with their prayer, they say ramen. I think that's very, very funny.
I mean, how is this any more ridiculous than a yarmulke?
Right, exactly. That's exactly it.
Or a rosary.
Sure.
Or, any other piece of just jewelry and whatever that people wear to feel like they're pleasing the great man in the sky. I can't imagine that if there's a God, that he gives a shit what you wear on your fucking head. There's a God, right? He created stars, created the whole everything, like the fucking all of it. You cannot think about a thing and be like, what about that? Nope. Omniscient deity fucking created the whole thing. Like, I'm pleased when I drywall a wall, right? I'm pleased. I'm like, man, look at that. Holy cow. Look at, if I repair a plumbing, I'm happy with myself. Like, well, it's not leaking anymore. This guy created fusion, right? I'm done. Created not only the idea of it, but the action of it. But I'm worried what's on your fucking head.
You just see somebody grabbing onto his toga at his knee, like, hey, God, can I wear this hat? Can I wear this hat? He's like, I'm kind of fucking busy basically making sure no fucking stars collide in the universe. Wear what the fuck you want.
Right. Imagine a symphony conductor. Yeah. He's standing there and he's fucking busy and there's a whole symphony, except for the symphony is everyone and everything, So it's a really big symphony.
It's a very big symphony. Hard to get tickets to.
Man, it's a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
The stick is huge, but the audience is massive, right? And nobody dares cough during the performance.
Right.
I'll fucking tell you that. Yeah, and then a 3-year-old runs out like, I want a banana. What?
You're an atheist. Give me a fucking break, Michael. All right, you know what? We need to start going to church every week.
Equally ludicrous are some really awesome Facebook posts. This is from Richard Dawkins Foundation, the Richard Dawkins Foundation site. I love the title to the article is "Loving Christians Respond to Atheists." Loving Christians. So Fox News, ever the bastion of good reporting and objectivity, and their viewers. There was a story about the 9/11 Memorial Museum and whether there should be a cross there. And, of course, there were some folks who said, no.
And that's really it. Just no, I don't know that that's a good idea because there's a lot of faiths in the United States, and maybe we should not choose one faith over all the rest of the faiths.
Some folks put some pretty hate-filled shit all over Fox News' Facebook page. I know it's shocking because, most people are so responsible on Facebook with their commentary. But, I say kill them all and let them see for themselves there is a God. Shoot them, shoot to kill. To all atheists, singular. Die and rather than and, go to hell. Haha, if I could shoot all of you in the head with a 12 gauge. No end to that.
Wait, hold on. Because
I could.
You put punctuation in there, Tom, that certainly was not there.
I know. I was being somewhat generous with that comment.
You're being very generous to this statement because, first off, it's in all caps, and there is not a bit of punctuation in there. The reason why we have punctuation is so we can communicate, because if you don't, those fucking words don't mean anything.
Yeah, I love this. That's easy. Shoot them. Shoot them. At least we know where they're going. Waste of oxygen. Are you running out?
Yeah.
Nail them to the cross, then display it.
That to me, I think, is one of the ones that I look to and say, okay, well, that I think is Christian values sort of encapsulated right there.
Nail them to the cross and then display it.
Come on. The last one is my favorite. What is I thinly? What is he thinking? What is he trying to say there?
I think he's trying to say I think, but clearly he cannot do it properly.
I think we should hang the leader of that group on a cross with nails through their hands and feet. Or maybe his hands and feet. I don't know if you'd want to say there.
Or her.
Place a crown of thorns on their head. Ram, and it's RAM, so it's what, random access memory? A spear through their side.
2 gigs.
all after being whipped and beaten publicly. So just so they can endure what Christ did, so they can understand the sacrifice behind what the cross symbolizes.
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense at all. First of all, it's pretty hard to get behind your idea that, like, well, yeah, but Christ died for your sins. Yeah, but he's coming back. And he fucking knew it. You know, it'd be like if I said to my wife, I'm leaving. You know, I'm leaving. Well, that's a big deal, right? And I'm leaving, but I'll be back in 3 days. You know?
It's a huge deal.
There's a fucking gulf there. If I die, for example, big deal for me. I'm not coming back. I'm just fucking dead. But if I die and they're like, yeah, but you're coming back. Shh. Fuck. Don't tell it. You're coming back. 3 days. That's all you got to do. 3 days. Okay. Yeah, all right. Fair enough. I can, well, okay, let's play. 3 days? Fine. First of all, that doesn't make any sense anyhow, but who are you going to, what leader of the atheists? Pick a leader of the leader of people who don't believe in something. Where's their leader? Who's the leader? There's no leader.
The family leader.
Right. No. Leader. When you were last at atheist church, Cecil, wait, there's not one of those.
Right.
What about the atheist pope?
Yeah.
No. The hat's awesome, though. Man, it all comes back to the hat today.
Giant colander, that's why. Okay, so the thing I love the most in the world is my wife. If somebody were to come out and say, Cecil, I don't like your wife. Cecil, I hate your wife. I would not say to them, you know what? I would like to nail you to a cross, ram a spear through your side, and put a crown of thorns on your head. I wouldn't say that to you. Because the thing that I love the most in the world, they hate. And they're not even saying they hate it. They're not even saying they hate Christ, they hate God, they hate whatever you believe in. They're just saying it's inappropriate. So for somebody to say, you know what, I think it'd be inappropriate for you to bring Sarah to the work party. That would be the equivalent of me walking in with a shotgun and shooting everybody in the face at work. Because I can't bring Sarah to the work party. Like, that's the fucking most ridiculous fucking reaction you could possibly have, is putting things on there that are just blatant threats at this point. It's not even like veiled threats, where back in the day it used to be where they'd kind of look out the side of their eye and be like, well, you're going to get what's coming to you. You know what I mean? But instead now it's just like, yeah, you know what, we're not even going to wait for hell. Because we believe in a magical man in the sky and a magical man in the ground, and the magical man in the ground is going to get you, and the magical man in the sky is going to get me. We're not even going to get that far. I'm going to kill you first. I'm going to fucking physically do harm to you because you don't believe in the shit that I believe in. The unverifiable shit I believe in, you should fucking believe in it, or else I'll kill you.
Look, you're doing benevolence wrong, right? Like, you've got an all-powerful, all-loving, benevolent God, and you're like, believe in him! He's so nice! Oh, God, my kid, you see how much he loves you? I swear to God, I will stab you in the face! It's like, it's like a jealous boyfriend, right?
It really
like
is, yeah.
If I can't have you, nobody can. Oh, stabby. It's like, shut the fuck up.
I hope you're as committed to safe sex as you are those abs.
I know you're all about that abstinence thing, but, I mean, come on. B. Palin, are you serious? Like, you're not gonna hook up with, like, before you're married? For real?
For real.
For real, for real?
For real, for real, for real.
Equally ridiculous, Cecil, I think, is Rick Perry.
Yeah.
My God. Rick Perry is the governor of Texas. As we all know, the governors, Texas produces a lot of high-quality governors. I don't know if you guys have noticed that or not, but really just good folks.
Nice
all
hats,
around.
too, down there in Texas.
They do. Again.
Yeah.
Again. I wear a hat every day. I think I'm going to have to revise that practice. I'm getting nervous about hats in general at this point. Hats just don't seem like the good idea they used to seem like. He's got, the governor has a pretty surprising abstinence-only policy. You wouldn't have guessed that.
No, not from Texas. That's a pretty progressive state.
Conservative Christian nutter. And shockingly, it's not working. More kids are getting pregnant in Texas, despite them saying, don't have sex.
Right.
Yeah. Strangely, that doesn't work to a 15-year-old with a boner. You're going to tell a 15-year-old with a fucking raging hard-on, hey, ignore that. Are you fucking kidding?
Yeah, right.
Are you kidding? That is, you clearly are out of fucking touch. Abstinence only is probably the worst idea as far as sex ed, because it does not involve sex or education, either of them, right. Actually. So as sex ed goes, it's totally ineffective. The sex ed in Texas consists only of a single unit of abstinence-only education. That's just not enough, and it also emphasizes, and this is my favorite part. This is the part of the story that actually is the most appalling, because the curriculum emphasizes that birth control doesn't work.
Right.
So now you're telling them, don't fuck. But if you do, definitely don't use birth control, because it's fucking expensive and it doesn't work anyway. Thanks. Now everyone's pregnant.
And who better to raise a child than a child, right?
Oh,
I mean,
it's a phenomenal
if you're
idea.
looking for somebody to raise a child, what you really need is children raising the child. Because
how could it go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way, I think, to make sure that the children wind up just as fucked up as the parents. Look, if you don't talk about sex around kids, they don't know about it. And then they go out and they're like, hey, I got this thing in my pants and it wants to fucking get out. So what you doing? And kids are gonna bang. They're gonna bang because their hormones are screaming to bang. And you know what? If you are going to try, you cannot stop the hormones. You just cannot do it. There's no way to do it. Unless you fucking lobotomize all the kids, right? Like, that's the only way you're going to do it. Or, like, tie them down from, like, the period of 12 to 18. Like, those are the only ways in which you're not going to have kids having sex. Because the moment they're private, the moment they're away from their parents, the moment they're, finally away from their family for any moment of time, but in privacy with somebody else, they're gonna do something, because this is the moment that they're gonna have to do it. It's just an idiotic way to look at sex education, because you're right, it isn't sex and it isn't education. You're not telling them anything. You're not telling them anything about sex. You're not telling them about anything to the dangers of STDs, the heartbreak that comes from unwanted pregnancies, and the heartbreak that comes from child pregnancies. Because let's be honest, these are kids. These are kids in high school. I'll tell you, I don't think I was an adult until I was out of college. So let's not pretend that you're somehow like equipped to raise a child at that age. So there's all these dangers that go around with it, and you're not going to tell them about those things. Like, you're telling your kids to fucking look both ways before you cross the street, but not fucking strap a jimmy on before you bang somebody.
It is ridiculous, and it's not working, and it's not going to work. So, and kids are going to find a way.
Right.
That's the other thing. It's like, kids are going to find a way. When you're 15, you don't need a lot of time. It's not like you've got to block off an hour in your day for this.
Right.
Like, you're a 15-year-old boy. You've got to block off, from 9:01 to 9:01 and a half. That's how much... This isn't a matter of supervision. And, the thing is that this sort of nonsense can only come from a place of misguided religious belief.
Absolutely.
There's no starting place for abstinence-only education other than from these misguided religious beliefs. It cannot come from any other source because it is irrational at its base. So it has to have an irrational foundation. And the only irrational foundation that's going to lead anybody to abstinence-only policies is religion. And we talk about, we just talked about this, why do we always have such a big problem with, why is it so funny, this Pastafarian guy? Why? Because, religion isn't helping.
Yeah.
It's not helping all these teen moms and teen dads in Texas who were told that birth control doesn't work and they should just repress their urges, and it's not. I take offense at the idea that this is sex education. I would take my kids out of a school that offered that kind of sex education. I would remove them from that school in a fucking heartbeat. And if I had to get another job to pay for private education, I would do that.
And I think you're absolutely right. If you approach this as from like a secular, strict biological viewpoint, there's no way to come at this and be like, oh, abstinence only is the way to go. Because the only thing that is going to keep you from thinking that abstinence only is actually the way to go is some sort of mystical worldview. That's the only thing that can do it. And these are the same fucking people that are telling their kids, don't have sex and don't touch yourself. And you know what? Like, you tell a kid that at that age, and there's stories about evangelicals and, the kids that get told not to touch themselves, how they agonize over masturbation. They agonize over it. They write it in their diary about how it's like such a big fucking deal that they had to succumb to masturbation today or whatever. And you're just like, if you tell kids this stuff, they are a fucking ticking time bomb of jizz. That's what they are. And they're gonna inseminate the first thing that they can bed, and that's a fucking guarantee.
If you're involved in the gay and lesbian lifestyle, it's bondage. It is personal bondage, personal despair, and personal enslavement. And that's why this is so dangerous. It's a very sad life. It's part of Satan, I think, to say that this is gay. It's anything but gay.
Bachmann has her, pray the gay away nonsense that her camp or her ministry or her whatever does. It's actually turning out, it was an interesting article on CNN that for a lot of Christians, even evangelical, pretty hardly right-wing Christian groups, the whole conversion therapy thing, even they're beginning to recognize that doesn't work.
It's kind of sobering when the people that are the most faithful among you are looking at you like you're crazy. And what does that say about somebody who's running for office in this country? Like, enjoy the theocracy if she gets fucking voted in. Because she is fucking cuckoo for fucking Cocoa Puffs. This lady is crazy. And her husband, there was some great shit they were doing on The Daily Show. Her husband's voice, he's got an obvious lisp and has like a very effeminate tone. Like, when he talks, he sounds fucking gay. Like, you listen to the guy and you're just like, dude, wait a minute. And, like, how many people call this shit? You say it all the time. Like, you basically, like, if you're so against the gays, you're probably the gay. You could just hear the way he talks and you're like, are you sure you're not gay? Are you sure you're not just a little gay? Just a little bit gay? They played what the guy had to say. And what he had to say, he starts out his statement when he's talking about homosexuality. He's like, well, there's a curiosity there. But what I want to, and he starts to stutter. And then he gets into the idea of how they're barbarians and they need to be taught. They're like barbarians and they need to be like cultured or something. It's a really, like, he's just you could tell the guy just, the whole time he's thinking this is just going, his brain is just screaming, suppress it, suppress it, suppress it, suppress it, suppress it. You know what I mean? Because he is a ticking time bomb of hormones. This guy wants to be balls deep in some dude, and he does. Like, you look at him, you're like, yep, that guy's a gay. But what he's doing is he is repressing himself because of the culture that we live in, where we just don't accept homosexuals as regular citizens. They always have to be we have to couch our language around homosexuals and have to be like, oh, well, they're not normal people. They're deviant or they're whatever you want to call them. They don't deserve the same rights as you. That's the culture we live in. I mean, we live in a culture where they can only get married in like 5 fucking states in our country. So we live in a culture that specifically already represses homosexuality. And this guy's religion is another reinforcement of that. So he's not only being, repressed from his culture, but he's also being repressed from his religion and his private life and probably his crazy fucking wife. So, like here you go. Here's a guy who basically is trying to make a living, praying the gay away. And recently I read that they were using partial federal funding for this fucking place.
No.
Yeah, man. I fucking like there was like a big petition flying around the internet. Now, again, the internet, famous for fucking anonymous hearsay.
Yeah,
so
no
how do you
kidding,
know? But one of the things that they were saying was like, well, it's privately, it's not all privately funded. There's partial federal funding. So they were there was a giant petition floating around the internet, like stop them from getting federal funding.
Oh, that's depressing. That's really depressing. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea that you would have a ministry that tries to just fundamentally change people, and it's only this, right? Because if you came and said, like, I like salad, they wouldn't be like, conversion therapy, now you don't like salad, right? They'd be like, because they're not worried about what you like to eat. Right? They're not. And if you were like, well, I'm fat, can I still love God? Yeah, you can still love God. Come on in. Like, we'll have a party. Here's some donuts. And be like, okay, cool. Be like, I like the dick. Are you dude? Yeah, sorry. What? But I like all this other stuff, and you don't care. Like, I like video games, and I like, you could tell him virtually anything. You could be like, I like to smear myself in mustard every night before I go to bed. Like, okay, well, fair enough. I'm certain they'd be like, that's kind of crazy. Like, why do you like to do that? That doesn't seem like a thing you should like to do. But fine, come on in. God loves you. Here's a sandwich. But like, if you're like, well, I like the dick, I got one too. Nope, not gonna happen. And it is telling to me that much of the anti-gay rhetoric seems to center around homosexuality among men. Like homosexuality among women seems to garner much less vitriol and many less mentions by these nut jobs. And I think that's just because, most of the guys are like, well, yeah, but that's hot. I'm not going to get in front of that.
What you want to say to those people, Tom, especially when they talk about, like, if you're born, that you're not born this way, that you choose to be a homosexual, is like, well, when did you choose to like liking women? When did you choose that?
It was May 3rd. No. Right.
Yeah, because I didn't fucking choose that shit. I wasn't just like, I see that there's fucking chocolate and there's vanilla here. And I can go with the chocolate or I can go with the vanilla. I didn't fucking think like that. I was just like, so there's that and there's that. Well, obviously, clearly, I would like, the female here. I think that's what I'm attracted to. Like, I never really thought about it. I wasn't like, there's fucking smorgasbord. I can take a little bit of fucking column A and column B. Or I never thought like that. Did you think, you want to ask these people, did you think like that? Did you have to consciously choose, what, I want women. I want women, even though I'm sort of wanting some guys sometimes. I really want women.
Anyone who has experience with kids, like little kids. I've got a 4-year-old boy. He loves women, man. Like, he already, like, he's not at a place where he chooses between, fucking nectarines and apples at this point.
Right.
And I'll be supportive, but I will be shocked and amazed if he turns out to be gay. Because he is really enamored of women. Like, we've got my sister-in-law, he is very much enamored of her. And when we are going someplace where she is going to be and we are having a hard time getting him in the car, we'll be like, come on, Aunt So-and-so is going to be there. And he runs to the door. He runs there. He tells me all the time about how his babysitters are so pretty and he likes them. He's not making a conscious choice. He's just following the fact of his biological being. And why would it be any different for a homosexual? Like, or bisexual. They're just following the fact of their biological selves. That's all that they're doing. There's not a choice. Nobody would choose that. Nobody would be like, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to live a life that's really hard. I'd like to be ostracized from friends, family, church, and community. That's what I would prefer. What do you have in the way of getting my ass beat today?
Yeah.
You know, like, it doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't, because there's no other choice that comes with that level of consequence. There's no other choice you could make that other than to be like a mass murder or something absurd. There's no other choice that you could possibly make that comes with that level of anger and vitriol and isolation. If it was a choice, even if you thought, I'm going to try it, if it were a choice, you would try it and you would say, this is really hard and I don't want to do this. And you would just go back. But it's not a choice. And so nobody does that, because even saying it's fucking absurd. No one does that.
I wish the American media would take a great look at the views of the people in Congress and find out, are they pro-America or anti-America?
Bachmann just gets kind of crazier all the time. All the time. This is a woman who's running for president who has these insane beliefs about homosexuality. And, turns out she's also an end-of-the-world nutter. Big time. Predicted the world would end in 2006. Didn't do that, though.
Fair enough. I wonder if she did have, like, on the back of her bumper sticker, like she had that May 21st, you can know sort of thing on the back. I wonder. You got to kind of wonder. I want to play a clip, Tom, of her giving a prayer. And I just want the listeners to listen to it and just hear how crazy this sounds.
Lord, the day is at hand. We are in the last days. You are Jehovah God. We know that the times are in your hands, and we give them to you. But we also, Lord, are astute enough to recognize the blossom on the fig tree is opening. The day is at hand, Lord, when your return will come nigh. Nothing is more important than bringing sheep into the fold and bringing new life into the kingdom. Lord, you are the one who chooses us. We don't choose you. You choose us. And there are young people, Lord, that are to be chosen. You have gone, Lord, and you have plowed the field. You have planted the seed. You have watered it. You have weeded that garden, and the harvest is at hand.
Now, the thing about this prayer that makes it sound, I mean, when I hear somebody do this, the first thing that comes to mind is please keep your prayers silent. Because the moment you start talking about them, you sound as crazy as can be. And when she's like, oh, God, you're Jehovah, like, that is so weird. It's so strange and weird. And it almost sounds like she's casting a spell at some point.
How different is praying than any other magical incantation? I mean,
Not
how
much.
much different, honestly, is it? You're calling to a spirit to assist you in some way. There's no double bubble boil in trouble or whatever, but it's not that far off. I mean, it's really not. And I mean, this woman, how could you possibly elect to lead you somebody who thinks your fucking days are numbered? Like, I would let this person be like the leader of the scavenger hunt, right? Like, hey, Joe, we got number 7 on the list. Why bother? What? The world's gonna end at noon. It's 11:45. Like, I'd like to plan ahead. No, there's no point in it. I mean, what the fuck?
Right.
What the fuck?
Right.
This person should be on the margins of society. This person should be ridiculed from every corner of the world. This is not reasonable. This is unfucking reasonable. She's crazy. She's fucking evidently crazy. She believes in the fucking end times. She believes homosexuality is a choice. She is a lunatic. A fucking lunatic. Look at her.
Her being in charge of the government and having the end times notion is like having Debbie Downer from Saturday Night Live be a suicide consultant hotline person. Without any sort of sustainability in mind, like, think about what you could do as, like, the president or somebody in real power, say as a senator, what you could really do to this country. if you were pushing through legislation that was just like, well, the world's going to end very soon, so we could do whatever we want. Fucking, we could just shoot missiles around, play fucking catch with fucking uranium. Like, it doesn't matter. It's all going to be gone soon. So drill, strip mine, clear cut, destroy everything you can, because we're all going up into the folds of heaven soon. And you know what? Drill, clear cut, strip mine, and you will be going to heaven soon because there won't be a world left. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Here you go.
Yeah, there's a whole group of people who ardently hope to bring about, the Armageddon. That's because they believe in Armageddon, right? They believe in the fucking fever dream that is Revelation. That's crazy. This woman very clearly believes the same thing. So, why not? Like you said, why not launch missiles? Why not? You're not hurting anyone. You're just fulfilling the prophecy of your God at this point. There's fucking no harm in it. That's terrifying. This whole idea that, and I think you and I have both been accused by people who don't think well of, atheists being immoral or living in a world that is completely morally relative. But I'll tell you what, I will take moral relativism all day and twice on Sunday over this kind of nonsense.
Right.
If you ask me, Tom, would you launch fucking missiles at... No, I don't want to bring about the end of the world. That seems like a bad idea. I want to extend the life of the world as long as I can. That's...
Yeah, indefinitely,
what I'd like
if possible.
To do. I want to get the whole 5 billion out of it. Like when the sun expands into a red dwarf and engulfs us all, okay, fine, I give up. Sea's boiled, what can you do? But I want my whole 5 billion. If I can get it, I want the whole 5 billion out of it. Not 25
years.
Well,
at the rate you're going, you're going to get, one and some change. Yeah.
In the name of Jesus, we speak that. Oramana shanda karaba. Lokoremene bene jede kede burishida kidibera sana.
What kind of feeling? I'm high on believing.
Almost, but not quite, equally disturbing is a story you sent me from the Telegraph. And this is a story about Jewish leaders who, rather than advocating for reporting child abuse and child sexual abuse, they're basically trying to keep it in-house. You're trying to keep that, they're going to handle that themselves. And not in a way that they're going to, take child sex abusers and put them in, rabbinical prison. Right? I haven't seen one, but I'm, Instead, what they're basically saying is, what we should probably do is just give them a shame on you, and threaten to expose them to the community if they don't change their ways.
Sure.
That's a terrible fucking idea. A fucking awful idea. And it didn't work for the Catholics. The Catholics gave this a whirl.
Right, sure.
It didn't work. It's basically crushing the Catholic Church in a lot of ways. It certainly has not helped them. So the idea that they would try to follow that model of hiding abusers of children seems so incredibly unconscionable. But this whole idea that their community is the community with ultimate authority. So why would you, if you don't respect secular authority as a real authority, why would you report it?
What he's saying is that it's what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you. This is exactly what he's saying. He's saying, I'm going to say to you, you're diddling kids. I'm going to go up to you and be like, look, dude, we know you've been diddling kids. So you have two choices. Either stop diddling kids or hide it.
Right. That's exactly what it is. We'll expose you to the community if you don't stop. Oh, okay. So I just need to make sure this never gets reported.
Exactly, because what is our choices? They're going to be like, oh, well, I could I could wind up, because I'm obviously a fucking unhinged crazy person because I'm out there diddling kids, right? I'm obviously there's something fucking wrong with me because I'm fucking out there fucking on little kids, okay? So they're not going to stop that. That's not going to be something that they're going to stop. What they're going to do is they're going to stop doing it so blatantly.
Right.
That's what they're going to do. What you're doing is you're forcing them to hide it more, threaten to injure more, maybe cause some people some more trauma than they actually would have gotten. That's what you're doing. So it's absolutely the worst plan you could possibly. Take them out of your community. Instead of saying, you know what we're going to do is we're going to shelter these people in our community, these awful, hateful, evil people that want to ruin children's lives, that when those people become adults, there's a propensity that they'll continue to do this. We're basically just going to be sowing the seeds of evil in our community, or we're going to take this person and throw them the fuck out of our community because we're good people.
Right.
Those are your two options. You're choosing fucking A.
If somebody in our social circle was found to be an abuser of children, they would no longer be in your fucking social circle, right? You wouldn't be like, hey, let's invite Jim over. Really?
Sure.
Because wasn't he, Jim? Jim? Really?
Yeah.
But no, there wouldn't even be a question. There would never be a question. They need to be marginalized. They need to be kicked out of polite society. They need to go to jail is what needs to happen. They need to get, because it's not, even if it worked, and it wouldn't, and it's absurd to suggest that it would, but even if it worked, it's not enough to have them stop the behavior that they never should have done in the first place. That's not enough. They also need to be punished, and they need to be removed from society. What message do you send to the kids? Well, that guy fucked me when I was a kid. Well, yeah, but he's not doing it now. Oh, okay, well, fair enough. Really? Like, why don't we send the message like, we value you. We value your yourself, your safety, your innocence as a child. And if anybody threatens that, we will come at them.
Yeah, I'm not like you, Tom. I'm not one of these people who thinks that vengeance is necessary in a legal system, but I think justice is, and I think that the child, whoever it is that is being molested, if they don't get any sort of justice out of this situation, then they're going to grow up fucked up, thinking that everybody is against them. I mean, you want to alienate a child, have them be sexually abused and make them think, not only are they ashamed about what happened to them, but then suddenly the whole world is saying, well, it's kind of fine. That sort of thing is, we really don't really frown on it. We just make sure that they do it quietly. It's so funny, Tom. You contrast this story with the first one we covered, or the second one on the Dawkins one. Don't believe in God, we want to ram a fucking spear through your chest. Diddle a kid, we want to hide it. Fucking contrast those two stories, and that tells you everything you need to know about organized religion right there. Everything. Right there, encapsulated in two stories.
Lord, we just ask to be covered with the blood of Jesus. Open hearts, Lord, open hearts.
Another article that you sent from theage.com, this is Australian. Sex abuse led to 26 suicides, says the police. Sex abuse by clergy, again. Fucking again. 26 suicides. That's insane. And to have people possibly suggesting at all that you should, deal with this in-house. You got 26 bodies at this point. Not just ruined lives.
Yeah.
But ended lives. It is impossible. It is genuinely impossible to defend this. Any community, whether it's a religious community or not, you find out people are victimizing children. They gotta go. They've got to be cast out of polite society. They have got to be. You have to send a message that there is no room for that here. That there are some things which we will not give quarter to, that we will not hide, that we won't, we will not let this shit stand. And I think if you don't, it's a pretty fair line to say, yeah, you can't abuse kids. Like, really? Like, is there even anything controversial about that idea?
what this article tells me, like when I think about this led to 26 suicides. There's a This American Life, Tom, that I know you've listened to. It's episode 425. It's called Slow to React. And it's a story about the first story is about this guy who was sexually abused as a child. And he goes up on this like sort of thing down the road, like 20 or 30 years later in the future, he decides to kill the person who abused him. He never actually, I'm going to ruin the story for you, he never actually kills the guy. But it's a story of sort of like the thoughts that go through somebody who has been abused mind. If you listen to this story, it's I think it's very telling about what happens to somebody who's been abused, the sort of steps in which they go through it, and then the feelings that they have towards the people that were involved in it. And one of the things that he says that I think is very enlightening, he says he felt like he was bitten by a werewolf at one point in this story. He talks about how, I feel like, because the sex abusers have this, sex abuse victims have this propensity to become sex abusers in the future, he felt like he was a ticking time bomb. And he said he made a pact with himself that if he ever felt those urges to, diddle a child, he was going to climb a mountain, because he was into like climbing at that point. He said that he was going to go climb a mountain and fall to his own death, basically commit suicide, rather than diddle another kid. And I can't help but wonder how many of those people in that sex abuse, the 26 that were suicides, I wonder how many of those people made the same pact.
Sure. It's not a secret that, abuse as kids leads to kids or, adults that abuse. That's right. That's pretty well established.
But let's begin tonight in Norway. Obviously, what Norway's going through right now is just awful. People are upset, angry, outraged. Although some people's upset, anger and outrage, at least in this country, extends into areas that may surprise you.
Why is the liberal press playing up the Christian angle in the Norway shooter case?
The mainstream media was quick to paint the Norway terror suspect as a crazy person and a Christian extremist.
They just sort of lay down this narrative every time there's a psycho out there.
He's some fundamentalist Christian. That is not the case absolutely at all.
They quickly label him Christian when there's nothing religious about his approach.
The idea that in any way he represents any mainstream or even fringe sentiment in the Christian community is ridiculous.
Yes. The massacre in Norway is a tragic story about the persecution of Christians.
So we've got to now talk about the Norway massacre, I think. Everybody, I believe, knows this story. There's no need to rehash, I think, the particulars. It's awful enough that that everybody knows. But the Norway massacre, incredibly awful, incredibly violent, very difficult to believe that one man could cause such chaos and devastation with such a large death toll. That being said, you look at the way that Norway handled the aftermath of this. Here in the States, we've had some domestic terrorism with the Oklahoma City bombing, and obviously we had 9/11, and we handle it with this rage and this fury. Like, it seems like nationally we have this righteous indignation, and I think that is to some degree fair to feel that way, but we tend not to temper that righteous indignation with compassion and reason. We don't seem to get our feet back after they get swept out from under us sometimes. And so we've headed down some paths as a result that I think are destructive. This massacre in Norway was met by the Norwegian government with calls for, more multiculturalism. And that was this guy's Anders Breivik. I'm not sure how his last name is actually pronounced. That was his whole hate-filled 1,500-page diatribe. It was all about anti-immigration and anti-Muslims and anti-multiculturalism, and Norway responded with basically fuck that, fuck that. That's not the problem. The problem isn't multiculturalism. If anything, this shows us that we need more, that we need to teach people to be more compassionate, that we need to teach people to be more accepting and understanding. We need to increase people's awareness of other cultures and find ways for more people to have a better appreciation of those cultures. That is the way to handle this situation.
Yeah, but Norway doesn't have a giant military-industrial complex they need to sick at somebody. You know what I mean? Like the thing is like we got this fucking giant military-industrial complex. We need to shoot something. Something comes after us. We have to kill it. We have to kill it no matter what. Now, I agree. I think, one of the things that is, kind of ironic about this whole situation is this guy was, a crazy Christian extremist. They like to call him extremist, not terrorist, by the way. I love how only Christians can be extremists, but only Muslims can be terrorists. So this Christian terrorist, complete fool that he was against Muslims. He was a Muslim hater. That's what he was. And he had an 812-page manifesto that basically said this. What I think is the best part of this and the most ironic part is like, the country that you went after with your Christian attack is extending the olive branch now. The Christian values that are turn the other cheek, that, the ones that everybody loves to talk about, they love to talk about turn the other cheek. Well, what is Norway doing right now? What are you doing right now? They're turning the other cheek. They're saying, okay, you know what? That, valid slap in the face, sir, but we are not going to change our ways. And we're not gonna, close our borders and, make people, get prostate exams at the airport and, whatever, all the awful, crazy shit that we went through. Because, what the extremists did to us is turn us into extremists.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, the whole goal of terrorism is to affect political change through violence. That's the goal of terrorism. And that was this guy's goal. And that's why he's a terrorist. That's why he's not a mass murderer. I mean, he committed mass murder, but he is not just a mass murderer. Right. He didn't go into Brown's Chicken and shoot up a Brown's Chicken and take the money out of the cash register. He was a terrorist. He had a political ideology that he was trying to push forward. And, he thought that the way to do that was through this extreme act of violence. And that's no different than other acts of terrorism in any way. But, the goal of terrorism is to instill fear and affect political change. And I hate to say it, but it's really effective against the United States. Because when we're the victims of terror attack, we react really emotionally to it. And it creates political change within our country. And it creates a tremendous amount of fear within the country. And it sort of sponsors these knee-jerk reactions. And then we waste incredible amounts of resources chasing people all over the place. It is a response that is out of proportion with the attack. And that's the goal of it. That's how asymmetrical warfare works. You want to create a response. You want to use as little of your resources as you can to make your enemy expend as much of theirs as possible, because they have more. So you can't go mano a mano on that. I am just so warmed that Norway's response is so compassionate and reasonable and rational. And is it easier when it's just one guy rather than this sort of shadow network across the globe? Yes, I think that it is it's easier to have a more level-headed response because it's sort of it feels a little more like an isolated incident. It doesn't feel like, well, shit, is it going to happen again tomorrow?
Right.
And so there's certainly that, and it's not to negate that. But bravo, Norway, as far as your response. I just think it's incredible, the way they responded.
I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Norway reacts to this. Norway is injured by this. Norway reacts to it. Of course, the whole world is reacting to it. And when the whole world reacts to something, Bill O'Reilly typically weighs in and gets it wrong. And he has again weighed in and gotten it wrong. But he's not alone. He's basically just the mouthpiece of people who assert that, Breivik was not a Christian, because Christians, by definition, he couldn't have been a Christian, because a Christian would not kill all of these people, because evidently they don't understand that there's actually a pretty broad tradition of Christians killing folks in mass. Pretty big biblical tradition of it, actually. There's a fair amount of genocide in that book. Just chucking that one out there, but there
might have been a crusade or a couple.
Yeah, there's
I don't know.
the Inquisitions, and then but in recent history, there's Tim McVeigh, and now. But his point is that it couldn't have been a Christian. That the whole idea that this guy was a Christian, and that that was in part a motivating factor to his violence. He's saying that is impossible. It couldn't happen. It's not true. It's part of a liberal media conspiracy, because the liberal media doesn't like Christians and Christianity. That is just wrong on virtually every level. The guy was a Christian. He said so. He said so a lot. I think that you have got to be religious in order to be anti-Muslim. This guy was aggressively anti-Muslim. I'm no more anti-Muslim than I am anti-Judaism or anti-Hinduism or anti-Christianity. I'm sort of anti all of them. I'm not specifically anti-Muslim in any way. I don't think that there's...
right.
How would you be not religious and still have some hatred toward one of the other major monotheistic religions? It doesn't make any sense. Where would your starting point for your anti-Muslim beliefs stem from?
Right. It's like not liking baseball but hating the Braves.
Right.
It's like, well, what's the big deal? You don't even like baseball. You don't even talk about baseball. Right. But you hate the Atlanta Braves so much.
That you shot them all. You just went out on the field shot the Atlanta Braves. I fucking hate the Atlanta Braves. What? I've never seen baseball. Doesn't make any
sense. Right, because I've never watched a game of baseball in my life. I don't know anything about the sport. In fact, if somebody was playing cricket, I might mistake it for baseball, but I'm going to kill all the Atlanta Braves.
This is a guy who considered himself a member of the Knights Templar, which was a Christian group devoted to crusading against Islam.
Right, but they weren't true Christians.
No,
Nobody who's a true Christian would believe in, they believe in Christ and, friendship and happiness and puppy dogs and My Little Pony and Care Bears and that sort of thing. That's a true Christian.
Right. And, you know, you hear that. How many times have you heard that to excuse shit? How many times do you hear that nonsense? It's like, well, you know, you point out like, well, Christians are being persecuted. Well, you're 76% of the American population. How's that possible? Well, those aren't all really Christians. Really? I mean, at what point and who gets to decide? Because if 76% of the American populace identifies themselves as Christian, if this guy identifies himself as a Christian, if this guy says that he is a member of the Knights Templar leading a holy crusade against Islam, I don't get to count that, right? But
yeah,
I do get to count it when somebody's Muslim, right?
Sure.
When someone's Muslim, it counts. It counts now. Well, he went to a madrasa. Never mind, that's the only schooling available. It's an Islamic school, but it's the only schooling probably available to him. You know, he grew up Muslim. Well, everybody in that region grows up Muslim. You know, you could make the same set of excuses, but we don't. We only do it because this guy has the same religious belief as the dominant religious belief in our culture. And so since our culture thinks that, you know, its religious beliefs are not harmful and not violent and incapable and incompatible with harm and violence, then clearly this guy was not part of our culture. And I agree to some degree. You have to distance yourself from people like this. But you don't distance yourself by saying this guy was not a member of the same religion that I am.
You know, a long time ago, I had a conversation where I mentioned just sort of a flippant in passing. I was like, yeah, remember that atheist that blew up that abortion clinic?
Right.
Yeah, neither do I. That's what I said in passing. And it drew this like sort of hatred from a bunch of different angles. A bunch of people sort of attacked me for saying that, being flippant about that. And I gotta say straight away that I think, the people that I got into an argument with about that comment, in a way they were right, because the Christian and Islamic and other people that are labeled as religious extremists or terrorists, a lot of their motivation, most of their motivation is political. It's a political thing. They're doing something for a political reason. The towers, the Twin Towers that fell did not fall because it was Christianity versus Islam. It wasn't, the Muslims versus the Christians. It was, our involvement in the Middle East encapsulated in an act of terrorism that wound up being way more political than it was actually was religious. But the thing that opens it up, the reason why we even talk about it in this context is because the magical thinking that goes into religion allows people to think that they're going to be saved if they do commit murder, that they can sacrifice themselves, that they're allowed to kill other people because their book says so. Yep. That's the link. It's not the link of the act. It's the link of the thoughts that go into them creating that act. That's the link. And that's the thing that you need to look at and say, no, that is wrong. That's a bad way to think. Because if everybody in the world thought the way like you and I did, Tom, that, you only get one fucking chance at this, I think there would be a lot less of this sort of thing. Because I think people would certainly cherish life more, at least their own life more.
Well, how could you not? How could you not? How could you not look at your life and say, man, I only get one, and when I'm done, I'm void. I really don't want to die. I really don't want to sacrifice myself. I'll tell you, Cecil, I don't want to sacrifice myself to a cause.
Or spend it like this guy. Well, I don't know about how long this guy's going to spend in prison. There was some speculation that he was only going to get like 20 years or something like that because of their. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. But, 20 years of your life? 30 years of your life in prison? If you're somebody who thinks you never get another shot, the rest of your life in prison even, let's just kill the death penalty completely and presume that that's gone from our ideal utopian world, Tom. The death penalty's gone, but you spend the rest of your life in prison. Ooh. That's going to suck.
Yeah.
That's going to suck. Because, man, I'm in prison, no possibility of parole. I went out and did some shit for political reasons. Now what?
Right.
So, the idea too that O'Reilly's going on and on about how this guy can't be a true Christian it's just absolutely ludicrous. This guy exhibits more Christian qualities than Bill O'Reilly does in some ways. If you're really looking at it. So, don't play that the liberals hate the left game or the liberals hate the right game and this is why they're doing it. Right. The liberals hate Christianity. This is why they're doing it. No, thinking people don't think religion is a good idea. That's what the problem is.
That's awesome.
I think, you got to separate yourself. I am one of these people that thinks belief is fine as long as it's private. Like, I don't give a rat's ass what you believe. In fact, I encourage you to believe whatever you want privately. But the moment it comes into the public sphere, like something like this, you got to take responsibility for that shit.
You are watching the beginning and the birth of the New World Order. And you want to call me crazy? Go to hell. Call me crazy all you want.
You know who's not taking a lot of responsibility these days? Glenn Beck. I love that these guys, something awful happens in the world. Awful massacre of people happens in the world. And of course, these nut jobs try to politicize it in a way that makes it about American politics. And that blows my mind. That blows my mind. But Glenn Beck goes on his. Is he still on the radio? He's still on the radio.
He's on the radio. Yeah, he's on the radio.
So he went on. He started kind of criticizing the idea of these political camps, these summer political camps, which is where these kids were slaughtered in Norway. And he went on and he said that He drew comparisons to Hitler Youth, and of course he did because fucking Godwin, and
Right, because it's a political camp is one of the things he's like, political camp? That's weird.
But this is the same guy who's promoted vacation liberty schools in the United States. I mean, this is the same guy that has promoted political camp for kids.
An awful tragedy happens all of this overseas. And like you said, he politicizes it in the American context, but then also, really insults all these people by saying, oh, that's Hitler Youth. They sound like Hitler Youth or whatever. I mean, like, that's like saying, oh, man, there's a lot of people dying from hunger in Africa. They'd lick and sweat off my balls if they could. You know what I mean? Like something awful like that. Like just like say something really, really disrespectful and awful every 30 seconds because that's what's going to get you attention. That's what he seems like to me. He seems like one of these guys that is just he's going to say one of the most worst, like one of the most awful, in bad taste things that he can just to get attention these days because nobody's paying attention to him anymore because everybody knows he's fucking crazy, or at least the shit he says is crazy.
I can stand on my head, Mom. Look what I can do.
Yeah,
I'm riding my bike with no wheels. Look what I can do.
One popular thing to do in American politics is to note that the summers in the United States over the past few years have been very warm. As a result, global warming must be real. What's wrong with this reasoning?
It's only gone up 0.6 degrees.
Yeah, it's not really a big problem, is it?
No.
So this is an article that is on a blog, a skeptical science blog, and the blog will link to it as well, but I'll give the address here. It's skeptical-science.com, and there's been some debate about climate change. Shocker. I know it's a surprise to everybody that climate change is still being debated.
Can you define debate?
What's that? Yeah, vitriol. Yeah. Is vitriol a way to anger?
Unsupported, unsubstantiated garbage versus science is how I would put it.
Yeah, irrational jib-jabbing against reason. So, but there was some recent research that was conducted, and that research seemed, on the face of it, to demonstrate that climate change was possibly not the issue that a lot of people say it is. I think that's pretty clearly insane at this point. That said, this blog actually does a great job of going through some of the information about that research and putting out there that that research is based on a flawed model. That the model has been tweaked to match observations but doesn't make predictions. And if you can't make predictions, your models are flawed. Your models are no good. It's not science at all. Of course, Fox News got a hold of it and put it out there as a counter argument to climate change, which is just absurd.
No, but this is a great blog, and we're going to link to it. You get a chance to read basically exactly what Tom said here. The fact is that there is a significant scientific consensus, and whenever stuff comes out like this, and this is the great part about science, right? Tom is like, whenever stuff comes out like this, it immediately goes through the rigor of scientific testing. People are like, okay, well, what's the basis for this report? What's the facts behind this report? How is this testing done? And then, if it's done and it's flawed, it gets pointed out that it's flawed, and it's not. It's not the dogma of science versus, the little researcher who's trying to get published. It's, people can do these tests and decide if these tests are valid on their own. If they're trained in this field, they can decide if their tests are valid on their own. This is science at work, and it's wonderful to see.
Yeah, it is. It's also interesting too the way that these scientific papers, which are complicated, right? There's no way to pretend these things aren't complex. They get spun by non-scientists. And I think they make a great point. Carrie Emanuel of MIT, one of the two scientists who said the study was good, I'm reading here, said bloggers and others are misstating what Spencer found. Emanuel said this work was cautious, limited mostly to pointing out problems with forecasting heat feedback. He said that what's being written about Spencer's study by non-scientists has no basis in reality. I think it's important to remember that unless you're a scientist, you're not a scientist. You're a guy reading what other people have summarized for you. You're always reading a paraphrase. You're always reading a summary. You're reading at best an abstract. There are very few people who can take a scientific paper and from a field that they are not trained in and pick that thing up and read through it with any clarity. There's a whole vocabulary and method with which you will not be familiar. And so the conclusions, the methods, you cannot possibly come after these things and criticize them with any real alacrity because you don't have the training to do so. So what most people, myself included, end up getting is news stories about things, the occasional like Scientific American style article about things, which is, that's fine. It keeps you sort of in the know, but it does not give you the tools that you need as a layperson if you were to actually look at the data and say, I am going to criticize this study and find out if its methodology was sound. That's not something I can do. That's not something most lay people, hardly any lay people can do. It's not even something that scientists from other fields have any real business doing. And it's because lay people and lay reporters don't generally understand the studies. They just don't. They need to have them paraphrased, and then they write an article which further paraphrases. And then we as lay people read these articles, and I think it's impossible to suggest that you can pick up as a guy with an English major or a philosophy major or an accounting degree or, whatever. You're not going to pick up a scientific climatology paper and read it through front to back. You're just not going to do it. You can't do it.
And may we somehow recapture the vision which for the present eludes us. Madam President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Expressions of approval or disapproval are not permitted.
So a lot of hullabaloo was made about the 9/11 settlement issues, the 9/11 settlement bill. It was being held hostage in the House and Senate for a long time. It finally, of course, goes through, and the purpose of the settlement, of course, is to provide funds for first responders, people who showed up on that day and inhaled whatever awful shit they were inhaling, and and we're not talking about for a lot of these people for an hour. This is for days, weeks, months on end as they clear the debris, as they sift through, as they did the important and grisly work that was necessary after such a thing. And more problems with the bill. It's interesting to note that it's only 11 years since 9/11. There's no way to know. There's really no way to know what the actual health effects are. The health effects are beginning to appear. They will probably continue to appear as time goes by. And there's cancer, post-traumatic stress. This article suggests that cancer is not being included in the list of diseases that automatically qualify. To some degree, you can say, okay, well, clearly not all cancers that people who worked at 9/11 come down with are going to be the result of what they experienced at 9/11. But I got to be honest, Cecil, my thinking is I'd give them the money anyway.
Right. Who gives a fuck?
I don't care if it was caused by heredity or, just give them. Am I that cheap?
I mean, the very idea that it's not covering cancer, first off, is ridiculous. That's like being like, well, my auto insurance doesn't cover, rear impact, side impact, or front impact damage. It only covers if I flip over on my fucking roof. Like, that's the only thing it covers. So every accident, I have to flip over on my goddamn roof in order to get covered. That's ridiculous. Right. The fact is that we should be covering their health. And, do we need a study to figure out what caused them to be sick? Whether it's heredity, whether it's, them fucking being chain smokers, whether they're, alcoholics or whatever that happened to cause them some awful thing to have them. Do we need to worry about that? Shouldn't they just have health coverage? What's the big deal? We pay for a lot of shit in this country that is useless or unnecessary.
Absolutely.
Our tax dollars go to garbage. And, you're not willing to, these guys that are mucking about in the worst conditions possible for weeks and weeks and weeks after 9/11, digging out dead bodies so people can have closure, and you're fucking not willing to cover that shit? Wait, why not just kick them in the fucking balls while you're at it?
Well, can you imagine looking at somebody who did that and saying with a straight face to them, hey, we're not sure if this was caused by 9/11 or not.
Gives a fuck.
Yeah, I know. Who cares? I don't, if the only reward for that work, that grisly, awful work, is that you get fucking health coverage, which you should fucking have anyway.
Right.
Here's the thing. This debate doesn't exist in all of Western Europe. This debate doesn't exist in Canada. This debate doesn't exist there. Because if you got fucking sick, it wouldn't matter if you got sick because you were picking up the pieces after a major terrorist attack, or if you got sick because you ate too many fucking potato chips. In all the rest of the fucking developed, industrialized Western world, if you get sick, you're like, I'm sick. I would prefer not to be. Is there a way to be better? Yes, there is. It's called fucking medicine. Here's a medicine. That was good. Yeah. Thanks.
Right.
That's the system in the rest of the world. Here it's like, well, hem and haw. And how do you hem and haw at a guy who's, done this work? How do you hem and haw at him? How do you look him in the eye? How do you look at his family in the eye and be like, geez, sorry, we'd like to give you fucking health coverage. We'd really like to. But it's not 100% clear whether this disease that you've got is related to the work that you did. So fucking suck it up.